I mean, como wealth is who you are, not what, you know what I mean? Not what you have. Y eso para mí, that's always been, that's what has made Puerto Rico such a luxury to me of life. So luxury is not, in the incredible beauty, geographically, incredible beauty of the place, and the abundance of food everywhere, and wealth, in that sense, wealth, and people taking into that, people sharing that. There's no question. You know, no one will go hungry in Puerto Rico. You know, of all the places I've been, typically eso es algo típico de Latino, but no, you know, but that's a, you know, that sense of wealth. You know, that, you know, that's something once.
That wealth is part of you and not a property that is
apart
from you.
Apart from you.
That you just take advantage of, or use, or calculate, or
share, and share, and have knowledge with, and that's your life. You know, one of the things my closest friends here are the people como que that live with, that have such a knowledge of everything that grows, that they use it for medicine, they use it for baths, they use it, y hablan, tú sabes, el ánimo que tienen, es como, and this is of their daily lives, is in this conversation, this living with everything that is around them. You know, they surround themselves with the vegetation that they want, you know, to keep their husband, you know, his stomach well, to keep the granddaughter, you know, without asthma, you know, this kind of thing. So that there's also that connection then. So it's not just, it's a connection with the living world, which I call, in the sense, you know, the physical living world. So then that's, do you know what I mean? That's like a currency as well. If you, but it's a different, you know, it's a currency.
It's a different kind of currency.
So this whole, so it's been, I bring that up because it's been with that, about the money. You know, thinking about that whole, that's been part of, you know, having to learn about well, how, where, you know, how do you stop this destruction? How do you speak about preventing, you know, this, what you're afraid is happening, of what you're seeing, that people are losing this wealth, and then you realize there's that silence that but we've mentioned now a couple of times, both in terms of, you know, that time between the massacre of Ponce and the end of this past siglo, and also in terms of, you know, Vieques, of now, where are we going, what are we? In many ways, it's, people have, the one good change is they're not bombing anymore. So, but that's really, you know, it's just that. There's no other change, really, in una manera. For me, for most of what I feel, what I see, that's verdad, eso. They're just not bombing. They're not bringing more.
Okay. Now,
it interests me now very much that como you are, as you've spoken with many people, how, and so I'm engaging you now, how you perceive this question of what is the change? What, you know, how has it changed for people? You know, how has it changed for people?
I would say,
and I'm a mature woman. I'm a 50-year-old woman. I've raised a child. I'm raising. You know, you don't stop ever raising your children or being a mother. But it's a very, you know, and this, for me, it's different. I mean, I was raised in North America to 16. My compassion with Puerto Rico is I was born here, so this is a very deep-seated passion. But in terms of nation politics, I feel, you know, I'm a person of nature in that sense. I feel very much, you know, we really being born and raised in the time I have, we're citizens of this planet. I don't have senses of nationality with borders in that way. And so my experience throughout these, especially the past 5-6 years, to this moment where I have this apprehension now with being involved with a business that I have had for 20 years, has been very successful, and this hesitation, this whole sort of trying to peel, there's an onion there I have to peel away, is different, I think, than what you're mentioning with, oh yes, people who have been in the struggle, who had a conception of it, but now that the moment is here, it's very different. And trying to touch on that, it's like realizing how frail we are and how unprepared. And so, in that sense, the change is so vast. It's day to night. In terms of there is a viability in the land, and having just spoken of, but the land was the important thing, was all we have. So to say that this is the viability in terms of economics, I think this is very difficult. This is, what does that mean? Because you don't want to lose the land, you don't want to sell the land, but if there's no other means of making money, what do you do? So in a sense, the struggle is the same. And having to trust politicians, the struggle is the same. Please engage in this.
Do you think, for example, that this emphasis on land might have a cost of maybe not taking into consideration the people, what they do, the other types of sources that are...
You mean in terms of the real estate people? Or in terms of the community?
Even of the community and the people that say, we want our lands back.
But I think that's a generational thing. Mm-hmm. That my experience with my friends just aquí, en la comunidad de Pilon, but let's take that as an example. I mean, what has been typical of my nearest neighbors is the children leave, after high school, if they continue with college or not, if it's just to pursue work, majority of them are in the United States. And this is a question of before David's death, that this was happening. What I'm seeing now, though, that gives me hope is more and more the young people in the family are helping in el negocio de la familia, si hay uno. And the thought is to stay and to, because they want to stay and make Vieques their home. So this is, there's a feeling, I think it is generational, that the parents will say, well, look, we've got, the land is worth so much, maybe we'll just sell an acre of this or, and make money this way right now. There's that opportunity. But the children are thinking, no, let's wait and see what happens. Let's take hold of this economy that's growing. So I think that, what I mean, there's a generational difference. The problem there is education, then, of course. And
do you think the new generation is more prepared to see other economic
yes.
ideas
yes.
apart from the land, from the value
yes,
of the
that's
land?
Exactly what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yes. But I think they also realize that it means going to the island, and that is that has always been, especially for the males, a very difficult step to take, unless there is a lot of family there, which in many instances there are, that they can stay with on the island. But it's a very difficult step, leaving Vieques to pursue education for the males. The females seem far more, able to do this. It is not as traumatic for them. And so if you're the kind of boy who is able in that social time of your life to be trusting with girls in that sense, then you know they go ahead. But the majority of the boys I have found, that's a difficult struggle. And then of course with the presence of the military, and the fact of their family being employed by the military in those instances, then many of them, you know, would continue with the military. You know, go and join the military. There was that happening, and now, of course, you know, this isn't happening. But yeah, the job, educating, and you know, what are we going to do other than tourism? Those conversations I'm not hearing enough of.
Other than tourism, what
are we going to do? And there's a giddiness, you know. I mean, I think it's, you know, I think the Puerto Rican people are, as a culture, the Puerto Rican people are very different from the North Americans in terms of that kind of perception of, you know, just we were talking about of currency of making a living. They're a very different perception. There's not, you know, this urgency. It's not that they're blind to the need for money, but the amount what do you have to give up? You know, especially here in Vieques, it's very graphically visible in order to get to that point of making money. Is something that people think about more than, you know, and I say that because I'm raising a son here. He's 19 years old. When my North American friends who live on the island, either permanent or just so many months of the year, immediately, you know, it's there's no question but that, oh, you go on and you will get your education and, you know, you will get involved. And it's as though, you know, it's amazing. You're not realizing, you know, he really just does not want to leave this wealth of who he is and this community for, you know, for that necessarily. He really hasn't seen yet, you know, and el problema ahí es, for me, the hugest problem is drugs, of course.
Claro, porque quedarse...
Porque de verdad, eso es... This is the most immediate job everybody can get, especially the youth, the young man on the street. At any moment, he can sell his little dime bag or, you know, to get by for the week, you know, a few every day or whatever. That's immediate. That's there always. So that's another interesting, I mean, you could say, well, every community has that, but I would say no. In terms of, it's very interesting. I think the family values here are very strong. The respect for family is very strong. You know, you typically, in that scenario, you don't have then the kids on the street selling pot to each other, but you do here, you know.
And that's leaving.
And I think, you know, I think the police know about it, and they rightfully, you know, so, you know, they keep their eye, but nobody's arresting all these young kids. I mean, that would be an absurdity. But that's something that does bother me, you know, that unfortunately is so available. The fishing in is, you know, is not, you know, it's there's just too few people now as a family doing that. The market, I would say, for that is more the problem. And there again, the drugs are a problem because so many fishermen have gone out and found drugs, and the currency for that was so much greater than all, you know, that's a problem for everyone to go through. That's
Nice. And I'm trying to like go into your into how you get into Vieques and all that, but this conversation is so cool that I want to visit. So,
and also I think too there, you know, it's the language thing, which is a major being in terms of that we're talking about tourism the ability to speak English, which kids are learning here by doing. Like people who are now working for Martino Bay, this kind of thing. This is something that sometimes I think I should go back to teaching English. But there again, ese sentido that I'm, it's like, what are you doing? I'm at this point trying to find my place and feeling good about who am I now, in this part of my life and with my community, my family.
When would you mark the moment in which you have been feeling this change? After the U.S. Navy left, or maybe after you noticed that the Navy was going to leave, or?
No, it was before David's death. Yeah, it was. I've known Bob Raven. That's an easiest way since he first came to this island.
How did you? So we can maybe start with that. How did you get in here?
I was living in a yunque in Palmel.
Okay.
And it's really sort of funny in a way. Suddenly there was construction going on, development of ¿qué es el nombre? Algo de yunque, something del yunque. This urbanization, Colinas del Yunque, algo así. And suddenly they're like discharging all this water into the river that I used for bathing and that I went to, so I went to it every day, and I'm seeing this discharge, and oh no, we have to do something about this. They can't just be discharging, people, they don't realize what they're doing. So I started to get involved in, okay, what can we do about this? And it was very frustrating. It's very much hit me. There's not a lot that's going to be done about this. You're looking at what's coming, and at the same time, a friend had been coming here going snorkeling, and diving. He said, oh, you must come and see Vieques. So a group of us came over one weekend, and that's how I got here, and I fell in love with the place. And it took about 3 years to try to actually live here, because the problem was, how am I going to support myself? And during that time, I was weaving things. Doing art and weaving things.
Weaving is
of palm, like these little baskets that are round, and this kind of thing.
Oh, okay, cool.
And doing some painting, santos, cosas así. So it was.
Como ese que tienes.
Sí, como ese that is that suffered many hurricanes and years, and. And so it was, of course, there was not, I could live here, but then I had to go away to sell these things, because there was nobody here who was going to buy them. There was no money here for anyone, And this was, okay, so I would teach people to weave.
This was around?
In the mid-70s.
Mid-70s.
So it took till about 77 or so, 76. That's when I first came, and actually this spot is where I've been in this spot since then, right here. And I found this walking around and chose it because I could see a yunque from here, and it's very green. Because one thing about Vieques is it's much drier than Puerto Rico. Y la falta de agua and the dryness was that made me wonder, what am I doing here? It was a little bit depressing to me.
Okay. Y entonces en el año 77, cuando vienes, empieza la primera lucha de los pescadores. En esa participaste.
Exactamente. It was funny, I was with, because now so many years later we see each other. I was with this group of monjas, of nuns, who actually were involved with some people from Hawaii who were here, and though I knew Ismael, I knew Tasso, and I felt a very young woman. That was a very much more como macho, como antagonistic, claro. And a little frightening to me.
The struggle, the way in which the struggle was.
Just the actual, and being part of the conversations, listening, the perception of the community. By that time, I have to tell you, I don't, my tearful story, within, ay Dios mío, in the first, my perception now, remembering back, but it seemed within the first month of living here in Vieques, then it was known I'm a resident. And you have to understand, this is, I don't know when you were born, but not long around that time. At that time, I was literally there was 3 of us, North American, blanquitas, rubia, in Vieques. We were quite, one was, it's interesting, living with her father, she would come and go because she was still in school. Another was a teacher, my friend Barbara. But we were quite a phenomena. And so this was, that was also for me a little bit difficult to deal with in the very beginning, and settling here and feeling safe and wanting to feel part of the community, and yet, and so I had to try to understand this. So in terms of the lucha, lo que estaba pasando en esto, what was going on there, and listening to the community, the frustration and sort of the stay away, mothers protecting their children from, the violence, because this is what people were very readily and rightfully afraid of. And one of the things that happened that amazed me so, and just one day I'm walking from the beach, and this man who was well into his 60s, early 70s, comes to me and says, así en inglés, why is it that you and your country have to, ay Dios mío, yo voy a llorar. Why have you taken from us our dignity? Why have you taken, yo ahí, in my bathing suit, una muchacha, and I was so taken back by this man. He had such command. And he's asking, why have you done this? Why have you taken our dignity? You've taken our jobs, and now you give us food stamps. Así en inglés, he's telling me this. And our youth are sitting at home, and all they think of is to sell drugs. And what do we have? We have food stamps. We don't want food stamps. You took our jobs. You took our land. We have no dignity. And with such a dignity, this man said this, and at this, it was just such an amazing thing to me to have someone so clearly speak their mind. And
what happened to you in that moment?
I felt like I felt like he was being a father to me in life. Maybe because I didn't have an answer and I had to put it somewhere. But that's how I saw him paternally. Maybe to disconnect myself, because I'm in that moment representing to him the United States. He's saying, your government. I don't really remember so much my response, to tell you the truth. But that was right at the time.
How that transformed you? Were you thinking at that moment of joining or sympathizing with the struggle? And then after how did you?
Well, this struggle in terms of the economy, in terms of the haves, the have-not, civil rights, human rights, was something my mother was very involved with. I was raised with the civil rights movement in the United States. So I was very much raised in this atmosphere of la lucha. As a child, civil rights, what was different for me here was the perception in terms of the military, the U.S. military. At that moment, of course, what I'm feeling is the fear that the community is feeling of violence from the military, because that is what was happening. They were being, their stubbornness, their myopic attitude, to me, to this day, is an astounding thing. At that moment, though, we're talking about violence, to the degree where I'm sitting there in Esperanza with this group of sisters and these people from Hawaii, la gente de Vieques, de Esperanza, families. I think Mirno may have been there. I don't, families. Barbara's family, different families have. And Alejo's family was there. These helicopters, were chanting. And these helicopters come down right above. I mean, I thought they were going to cut us in half with the blades. It was the most profound. And we were women and children on the beach. And it was just terrifying. It was astounding to me. That hits me. What can you do about that violence? You're a human being. You're made of flesh and blood. There's nothing you can do. This helicopter is coming there. What can we do? We had to move. We had to leave. And it was. How did I feel? That time. There was no questioning. Who was in charge of what was going. Of that moment. What was astounding to me was that people, yes, would go. The military would do this. I did not anticipate.
So in a way, the man telling you, asking about his dignity was something that was familiar with you, because you came from a background in which civil rights and all that was part of your kind of formation. What really surprised you about Vieques was not so much to struggle, but the enemy in a way, or the Navy, or the violence
and the total lack of discussion. I mean, that's beyond oppression. You're being attacked. There was no dialogue.
The lack of dialogue between the community and the U.S. Navy.
Yes. That's not dialogue. There was no dialogue. There was no, nor any thought of dialogue. And that to me was obvious in getting to know the military people that I did in that time, because they were still here. They were still, until 78, 80, there were still 500 or so always camped in Camp Garcia, y por allá en el oeste, como 20, 30 personas of the Seabees.
Okay. Y con esa gente ustedes, tú compartías con la comunidad, pero también llegaste a conocer a alguno de los.
Some of the people in this community were working there. Sometimes I would give them a ride. Also, I would go to the west side to get the leaf, the palm leaf, for my weaving. And so there I would meet, and the same on the east side, going to the beach as well. And so then you would have contact with these military people who were really very frightening people. In terms of these who were very, uneducated, mostly from the South, and mostly what you learned was that they were offenders, criminal offenders, who had a choice of you go to jail or you go to the Marines. And this was the
people they would send to Vieques.
These were the people, and hundreds of them. And certainly as a young woman then too, there was a very immediate, it's very, so a very scary situation. I was involved then with friends with a restaurant in Vieques and starting restaurants, and we would not let them, because of the violence, because of, there was no question that there would be violence, but that there would be violence if you let these people, that was, that's what they, their whole perception of being out or, being on, how do they call it? Whatever it's called, eso tiene un nombre.
¿Licencia o...?
No, es como, that they're...
Como una misión.
Yeah, but they call it, when they're not on, anyway, whatever it is, they're on...
On service.
Yeah, no, pero cuando tiene tiempo libre, bueno, there's a name for that. There's, whatever, not rest and relaxation, but they're, they were out looking for problems. And I think maybe too, yes, that brought, I had the knowledge of being, of the tensions with police in the South during the civil rights time. And so the actual, that kind of fear was not new to me, but it was different here, because on the other side, it was only, I didn't find that there was really a dialogue, and I think a lot of it was because of who I was. I was this young woman, and so different to this part, and there was a lot of distrust of who I was. Living alone with my animals, in the campo. I mean, maybe there was that perception, oh, she's a pacifist, a hippie, kind of thing. But I didn't have the avenues for getting involved with the community specific to la lucha in that terms, that I felt comfortable with. There was, it was very macho, tasoy, it's very male. And there was a violence there. It was, and to me, I really felt, these people are going to get themselves killed.
Let me just change the tape because